name is Andrea Peto, and I'm a historian and a professor at the Central European University in Vienna. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Teaching an interdisciplinary department, interdisciplinary courses. So, but I have also a degree in sociology, and I was a faculty member in a political science department, in a cultural studies department, in a history department, because I don't think that disciplines inform my work, rather the questions I'm interested in inform my work. I'm a professor at Central European University, and the attack on gender studies in Hungary was something which fundamentally changed the research I'm doing, because I was a kind of traditional historian writing about the history of the Second World War, the Holocaust, looking at women's memories and women's testimonies, and this attack on gender and gender equality, which is really important to me, actually forced me to ask the question that what is the origin, where all these horrible ideas are coming from? How come that after the Second World War, when we thought that this will never come back again, it's again coming back? And that's why I have got basically two lines of research. One is related to the origins of far-right movements, extreme right, and history of totalitarianism, authoritarianism, illiberal regimes nowadays. And I have another solid track record of publishing about the history of the Second World War, the history of the Holocaust, and this is a very strange and uncanny feeling when these two lines of inquiry actually are interconnected. So what I care about is the possibility to talk about important issues and the possibility of autonomy, dignity, and freedom. The history of reproductive rights in Hungary is specific in the European context, because the rights given to women has been always connected to military violence and sexual violence and rape during the First World War and during the Second World War. So I wrote a book about the history of the rapes committed during the Second World War, and the result of that kind of massive atrocities in Hungary. We are talking about 800,000, 1.5 million rapes. Was, of course, not only the sexually transmitted diseases, but also the introduction of free and accessible abortion. And from February 1945 onwards in Hungary, the abortion was free and accessible. And as I said, my interests are driven by two factors. One is the historical research. So I was really interested in the history of the sexual reproductive rights. And the other is its connection to the present day activism and how these are actually connected. And there are, of course, every individual has got a red line. What is the red line when you are getting mobilized? And of course, for me, the red line is when women's reproductive rights are attacked, and there are certain policy measures to attack that. So it was pretty obvious when these first attacks on gender equality happened that there is something really unique happening nowadays. And that's when we coined this term that gender becomes this symbolic glue, because it glues together very different actors and very different agendas and very different aspirations. And because gender became this symbolic glue, the most important battlefield in this illiberal fight for hegemony is the fight for reproductive rights, and for which is waged on women's bodies. And these reproductive rights are, of course, protected by different laws. So that's why the liberals are applying this kind of conservative counter-revolution in order to undermine those rights. So I have been thinking about these connections and how the different transnational transfer of certain ideas, policies, concepts like gender influenced the issues of reproductive rights. And then I received this invitation to join this project, and I said, yes, that's what we need, because the liberal forces are organized transnationally. There is a policy transfer, there is a know-how transfer. So it's high time to somehow think in a kind of dialogue and together with other colleagues who are also researching the history of reproductive rights. So this group of women who are working in this research project, they recognize that there is a transnational phenomenon which is enacting its program on the national level, and they are using the lessons learned from the national level to be informing the transnational agenda. And because it is happening on the national level, very often the academic discussion is focusing on one country and saying that we in Brazil are special because, we in Poland are specific because. And this is all true, because the legislation, the context, the histories are in the national framework. But what is really important to understand, and that's a major challenge for the recent academic research, is that these forces are beyond, above the national level. They are using, appropriating, hijacking the national level in order to support, promote, implement a transnational agenda. So when they are talking about the liberal international, to using this pun with the communist international, it's not an exaggeration, because there are spaces of know-how transfer, there are conferences, there are transnational NGOs which are coordinating this knowledge transfer. Unfortunately, one of them is actually based in Budapest, the Matthias Corvinus College, and the other transnational NGO, the World Congress of Families, has been promoted by millions of public money from Hungary and also from Poland. So this kind of transnational transfer is not interested in the nation. They are not interested in the national framework. What they are interested in is the power, and how this site, which is about the women's bodies and about the reproductive rights and the reproductive capacities, can be hijacked, controlled, and used as a form of governance for the illiberal forces. Reproductive rights had been in the center, in the forefront of this new Cold War, which is happening now, which is not that cold anymore after Russia attacked Ukraine, which is creating a new understanding about what is normal, what is acceptable, what are the important values, and how somebody should live his, her day life. And this kind of new world order, and I'm very conscious of using this term, is using reproductive rights and using this the righteousness connected to the desire and the order to reproduce and to produce more and more bodies which are controlled by the different states. So what is important in my work is that to look at the prehistories and to understand how historical analogies are actually working, what can we use from the past, and that's the reason why with colleagues we are doing this podcast series, the Sleepwalking on the Assault on Democracy, that there are lots of historical connections and lots of stories we can learn from if we would know what happened in the past. This is one story. And the other story is that no matter how painful it is, but what the center of what is happening now is that in democratic election systems, anti-democratic forces are being elected, very possibly with programs which are attacking reproductive rights. And they are using this kind of righteousness as a label and as something which is, on the other hand, influencing the everyday life, the lived realities and the experiences of lots of citizens. And this actually influences and informs my work, that I try to make these connections. I try to understand the traveling concepts, and some of the concepts travel, but we don't track this kind of traveling, how the illiberal forces are using previous policies, values, concepts, ideas, and they appropriate, instrumentalize, hijack it for this present purpose. So as an academic, my task is to show those connections, and as an activist, my task is to communicate and make it clear for the wider audience in an understandable language that what is happening now is alarming, and there is a good reason that we should all be afraid. A good example can be the present war in Ukraine and how the Russian forces again using sexual violence, rape as a weapon of war. And there are lots of Ukrainian women who are escaping from Ukraine, and they are pregnant. And they arrive to Poland when the abortion is illegal. And no matter that the women's movements in the past years organized fantastic, massive street demonstrations in order to prevent this very restrictive legislation to be passed. And these Black protests really created an important belonging and an important network of activists in Poland. And no matter that they have lost this fight, these kind of connections remain. And these connections now actually come very handy when they are organizing how these Ukrainian women who need help could get out from the country and could get to in time to a place where they are being helped, and they are receiving not only the medical but also the psychological help they so much needed. So I think this story actually demonstrates the legacies of historical legacies, that how important is that there is an army which has its constitutive element, the using violence and enacting violence on women's bodies and using women's bodies as a site for forging a cohesional force, which is otherwise missing from the army. And also that movements which are fighting for reproductive rights are often losing, and which of course causes despair, depression, and sadness. But it also has an element that movements never die, and when the moment comes, this kind of mobilizational know-how comes very handy, and they might help and make the difference in lots of people's lives.